5, the research system plays a major role in both the mechanical sense and what it tries teaching historically, with banking leading to increased gold production, astronomy allowing mankind to chart the seas, or how animal husbandry allows for cavalry units. But the tech that interests me the most is the first one, the one that's already unlocked for the player to use: agriculture. In the next few minutes, I will try to explain how that technology shapes mankind's history and the game's mechanics. Now, before the Fire Nation attack... Wrong video. Before agriculture, mankind lived a life of hunters and gatherers, surviving on what food the earth could provide, gathering plants and migrating based on what movement the herds they hunted. The problem with that lifestyle is a lot. For one, the population was usually around 30 to 50, depending what tribe you are part of. And while it's true many could be bigger and smaller, they never really got past around 150 people. There simply wasn't enough food for everyone to hunt and gather, as well as a large number is a lot harder to control by a shaman, who was basically the head of these tribes. However, settling down allowed for a social hierarchy to actually develop. You needed to force a group of people to take care of the children, one group to do the farming, obviously, one group to do trade, some to deal with religion, others to deal with the military, and a leader to head the whole operation. It wasn't seen to see these complex societies with multiple classes until the advent of agriculture, because there really wasn't a need for them. This change is played out in the game in two mechanics. The first is the population. You'd never be able to actually grow your population in the game past a certain point if you were hunters and gatherers. But settling down allows the mechanic of placing people where to work. You can move your population for more food, culture, or science, which is an important step in managing your empire, because you actually have a social hierarchy where you can move people depending on what skills they have. An important social class to develop, as well, was the religious caste. While others were supplying food for society, you could now have a group of people dedicated to religious ordeals, which translated to basically organized religions in more developed forms, such as Christianity, Buddhism, and basically we moved past paganism. Well, to a degree. It's a bit complicated. And this translates in the game mechanic where your religion goes from simply a little pantheon to actually growing to a big religion with workers and prayers and buildings and leaders heading the religion. The greatest change to occur, though, when man settled down was technology. So now you have a city with a food supply, but you need to defend it from other humans and wild animals. Metal weapons, like swords, is a great way to do that. That requires workers dedicated to things other than gathering food. It requires a fairly large amount of bronze, which means storing the material, and it requires making tools to actually obtain the material necessary to make the metal. And finally, you need a smith to make the weapons, which is a specialized skill. You could do none of this if you were hunters and gatherers, since you needed to constantly move to follow the herds of animals and to forage for unforaged land. Meaning you'd never be able to move around all of your tools to gather the metal. You'd never be able to actually store the metal. And God forbid you try to move a forge everywhere you go. Have you tried lugging those things? They're not exactly the lightest. Domestication can only happen by choice breeding of traits that you want of an animal. But you can only do that by capturing the animals and constantly breeding them. Which means if you are a nomad, you need to move them around and actually supply them with their food every time you went somewhere new. And while it's not impossible for nomads to do it, it is far easier in a settled society because you keep all the animals together, constantly breeding. So agriculture has to be the first technology, as its research led to your first city. In the game, this is the only way to sit down, gather, and process resources necessary for new technology, as well as specialized skills in these jobs. And to have specialized jobs, you need these people to do things other than hunter and gathering. How else are you going to gather that nice stone resource that if you don't have workers for, how can they mine and use it? How else will you keep your happiness up? God forbid your empire doesn't have stone, because that's the only thing that seems to keep your people from committing suicide. Obviously, this is kind of a big oversimplification of the advent of agriculture and the birth of society. So, if you're really interested in this topic, I would suggest doing your own research and watching other videos. And especially pay attention to world history. history class is what's really going to teach you this, the advent of agriculture. Anyway, thanks for always sticking. Oh man, I butchered that. Thanks always for sticking towards the end of the video. If you have any ideas, feel free to leave your ideas down in the comments or leave a comment. And don't be afraid to like, comment, and subscribe. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next episode of whatever this channel is.